How's it going, Andrew?
What's going on, Matt?
Not much. It feels like we just did this a couple days ago.
because
Fourth wall break.
Because we did do it a couple of days ago.
Season 3 coming in hot out the gate.
Yep. To our listeners who just listened, what will be last week, for a powerful, nearly 2-hour long episode that we just kept rambling on and on. So, I feel like my vocal cords are still hoarse, but here I am back again.
Well, you better make sure they're in shape for your first meeting as Worshipful Master, which will have happened by the time this airs.
Oh, I know. I'm going through all my final things, trying to figure out my agenda. Noticed in the bylaws that our agenda actually has a set order. Sent you it being like, wait, we have a set order?
It's a proposed order of business.
But I don't want to deviate. So then I went in and I've been editing it to follow in. I mean, I like the consistency. I like that it's in the bylaws because it gives you a consistent flow that I can play with. So just doing the finishing touches before tomorrow. And then the proverbial shit show can begin, as we like to say. I'll get my first swear out of the way.
Right off the bat, man. Right off the bat. Yeah, couldn't even wait until after we ran our intro music.
Grand Secretary's going to call me like next week and be like, Andrew, you've been getting a little wild on there. And I'll be like, I've been getting out of control, man. Season 3.
You gotta rein it in. We're going to Conference of Grandmasters of North America to record in like 3 weeks.
The proverbial shoot show is about to begin. The Shucks Show.
All right. Well, let's not make our guests suffer through any more of this. Let's run our intro music and get to business.
Sounds good.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for Fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right, listeners, today we have a very special guest as soon as I can unmute him.
He'll have to unmute himself.
Unless he has to unmute himself.
You can't unmute people at meetings. That'd be heinous.
Oh. That would actually be kind of terrible. Anyway, we have a very special guest today. I believe it's Worshipful Brother, correct? You've sat in the East. Yep, Worshipful Brother Brian Bird, the host of the Old Fashioned Masonic podcast. So thanks for coming on, Brian. We're happy to have you.
Oh, I appreciate it, guys. Listen to you. I'm anxious to here to be back on the other side of the microphone. Usually I'm in control, and as a control freak, I'm holding on to the side of my chair and just hoping I can make it through it without fumbling too much.
No, what ends up happening when we've gone on other podcasts is eventually we start asking them questions because we go back into our instincts and then it flips and flops.
Right. You know, it is nice recording with like fellow podcasters, though, because you know that the person you're talking to has experience with a microphone and has no issues with it and understands audio quality.
Right, for sure. No, it's good. You start to pick up a cadence, and about the time that an episode's over, your rhythm's perfect. It's like when a project's done, or when you come out of the East. About the time that you're out of the East, you figured out how to do it. It's just like any podcast. You figure out each other's rhythm and cadence.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So, Brian, for our listeners, can you just give us a little bit about your Masonic history and what got you into Freemasonry?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess I'll start why. I had exited the military, now 30 years ago, and was out for several years and building businesses and doing some other things and had great friends for years, but I just felt that there was this bond missing, right? And some of your listeners will say, oh my gosh, he's about to say what I feel. And a lot of military guys, we have great friends, but it's just that camaraderie is just a little bit different in the military. And I was seeking something different. And what escapes me is I have no family lineage, no legacy. And so what escapes me is, why did I reach out to a Masonic lodge? I still don't know what led me there, but I do remember going on. It was probably Ask Jeeves back in the day, and typed in, Ask Jeeves looking for a Masonic lodge. I just definitely aged myself. I found a lodge in Wichita, Albert Pike Lodge number 303, sent an email inquiry. That lodge then, and still to this day, is very good on servicing leads. And within, 3-4 hours, I had a phone call. And in about 2 days after that, I had somebody show up at my office, ask some questions. I had some questions, and I said, hey, I just want to be a Shriner. I didn't really know. That's what it was. I wanted to be a Shriner. I didn't know anything about Mason. I just want to be a Shriner. And he didn't bat an eye. His name was Roger Snellen. Ended up being one of my greatest mentors. He's back here on my wall. He was my installing chaplain when I became master. And he said, yeah, no problem. And I said, what do I need to do? Well, you need to write a check for the Blue Lodge. You need to write a check to the Scottish Rite. And you need to write a check for the Shrine. Okay, so 3 separate checks. Boom, boom, boom. I'll reach back out to you. All right. So comes back. We have some conversations. Fill out a petition. He says, all right. Well, I'll turn it over to the investigative committee. Fast forward, however long that was, it feels like an eternity, right? Investigative committee showed up at my house and might have said 15 words to me and spent the next hour and a half talking to my wife and daughters, which actually is what sold, I guess, the continuance of this. I knew I wanted to be in, but when you're on an investigative committee, if there's a spouse involved, a significant other, I think it's important to engage them and allow them to ask questions, because we are taking away time. We're taking their spouse away, whether it's 1 day a quarter or 6 days a week, to do sometimes Masonic stuff. And I think to get that buy-in, it certainly does help at the end of the year when you have to write a dues check, when you're doing your family budget. So fast forward, I became a Mason. Oh gosh, it's been about 20 years now. So I became this was interesting. So I was raised on October 3rd, went through the consistory I finished on October 17th, and became a Shriner on November 3rd. So I was boom, boom, boom as I came through. Yeah. Now, obviously, you're that's once you get through, you become a Master Mason. And some of the guys I went through with were just absolutely amazing. I knew none of them, and we had a pretty electric class, and we're all friends today. And then fast forward, so I was raised in October. I was the Tyler on January 1. The guy who brought me in was going to be the master that year. I went Tyler, junior steward, senior deacon, which is unheard of at our lodge. Our lodge is, over 1,000 people at the time, right? 8,000 members at one time in our lodge. So just massive. So there's a waiting list. So it was really unheard of, but we had a shakeup. And so went senior deacon and then finished the chairs. And I was master in 2015. Golly, 11 years ago, I was master. Yeah, so that's not very active in the Scottish Rite. I went back around to the York Rite, not active in the York Rite. Do Shrine stuff, on occasion. So, but yeah, I like Blue Lodge, but podcasting takes the time, and we do past master stuff. Again, we've got a pretty active past master core. In fact, we have dinner next week, and our past masters get together, and it's great bonding and some camaraderie as well. We get to talk a little bit of smack on the folks that are working their way through the chairs. So it's just kind of
right.
That actually,
that's
so actually, I'm curious now. So Matt and I have been having lengthy conversations. So in our lodge, we used to have like a past masters alumni society before we joined, years in the past. That kind of died out, I don't know, but 10 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, over 10.
Yeah, so like a handful of years before I joined. What type of stuff do you guys do with your past masters alumni group, or whatever you guys would be calling it?
Well, not a lot, other than we have dinner about every 2 months. We'll get together, and it's somewhere between 10 to 14 of us. We're getting older and then travel, so we're always happy, and we take a picture after every event. When we show up deep into lodge, so there's a lot of us, and part of that is, it's not really a Masonic secret, but, any of our guys as are working through the line, at our lodge, we don't let anybody call themselves a past master until they go through our past master initiation. That's all I'm going to say. And it's several years in the making for each person.
That's interesting. That's interesting, Matt. Write it down.
That is fun. Yeah. No,
I'd be happy to
it
talk
down
with
right
you
here.
about it offline.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
we do, and it's there's a lot of ritual involved.
Yeah.
Right. As soon as I recovered the documents from our now defunct past masters group and we looked that over, then we might have to have further conversations. See,
Yeah, no, it's good. And in
compare
fact,
notes.
I think one of our past masters is going to have us put together a charitable fund, and our lodge donates to our foundation. It's like, you know what? They call it the past master rolls. Why don't you guys pull your past master rolls out and start doing something? As past masters, we're always looking for something to do, and it's that balance. We have such big energy when we walk into the room. They know who the past masters are, and there's some really big personalities. I can be overshadowed in those rooms, I can tell you. But we try not to overpower the sitting master. So it's such a balance. We want to be involved, but and you shouldn't have to be asked. But we're kind of looking to be, so we're not overstepping, because every master is a little bit different, and we wouldn't want them to feel some sort of a way that the past masters are trying to take my year.
I'm going to say, we were just kind of talking about that on the episode that'll come out tomorrow from when we're recording this. And, it's interesting as a past master, because it does take a little bit to find that place, like that place that you belong and that place where you feel comfortable. And it usually does boil down to just that, letting the worshipful master ask you to do something, as opposed to being like, hey, I want to, I got to tell you this, I got to tell you that, being overshadowing.
Right. And, so I got some really good advice as I was heading into the East that, hey, the past masters aren't trying to run the show, but you need to use them as a resource. And I was used to building businesses and building teams, and this is just like a normal thing. So definitely in 2015, 16, and 17, our crew, we weaponized the past masters. We used them, and they loved it. And it's like, all right, you're good at this, you're good at this, you're good at this. And it was a great thing, not only for me. There's one less thing I had to worry about them sitting off to the side, keeping notes of a word I missed so they can use it against me later, one of these things. But yeah, it's great mentors. The past masters that I had were unbelievable mentors. I don't think that the lodge would have had the year it had that year without the past masters giving timely counsel.
Yeah, and I think it's an important thing, because there's been a lot of discussions I've been having with brothers and in my own mind, because for a long time when I joined our lodge, we had lots of past masters hanging about. And only in the last probably 2 years, a lot of people moved, a couple people passed away. And so suddenly our sideline of past masters, if they're not in the officer's line, which some of them are missing the presence of the past master. So I've been trying to think, and I'm going to continue to think during this year, what are creative ways to make the past masters return from their passing out, or whatever we've been calling it. They passed out, and to draw them back in. And I think it's exactly what you're saying with weaponizing the past masters. They want to have something to do. I would understand that. I know next year I'm going to look for something to have something to do, even if it's not the same. Obviously most people aren't going to want to have an officer's level of responsibilities on their plate, but having a couple things to look forward to is, I think, a great idea and something I want to explore.
For sure. And when my rhythm really started to develop in November, and I had 2 more meetings left. And so it's like you're sitting there, it's almost like the first one you want to weaponize is the one that just came out, because they're the freshest in the rhythm. They know the officers, they know the vibe. And our past master is usually either trustees or secretary or treasurer, but otherwise we just have a waiting list to even be a Tyler at our lodge. It is a thing. At one time you had to have if you go back to the 50s, you had to have an unlimited proficiency card, which is know the book, before you could even be a study club officer. And then it went to, you just had to have a proficiency card to even get on the line. But when you have the volume of members, you can get away with that. And at some point, they'll have to make decisions, if that still works out, because there's a balance. And, we've done several surveys, and most recent survey that we did which is a little terrifying, folks that have joined in the last 7 to 10 years, the reason why they joined and or are staying has nothing to do with the esoteric. It's really fascinating. So, a lot of people are like, oh my God, I can't believe that. I said, hold on. I didn't join for esoteric. I joined for camaraderie. So what do we talk? Why are we shocked? We're not listening then.
Well, I think one of the keys with that too is I think there's still interest in the esoterics, but it can't be.
Yep.
I think in an effort to try to overcorrect for a lack of education and esoteric kind of education, we've said this is the one thing we need to focus all on this, and you're like, no, that's one of the three things, and you're like, so yes, there was a deficiency, you should remedy that, but fellowship and the relief and support of brothers and the community service aspects and the education aspects are part of a triangular ecosystem, and so
Yep.
You got to always find a way to balance it. And I think that's what a lot of brothers are looking for is, if you do a good education piece and you're a good speaker and you're knowledgeable on something philosophical and you can make it real for the brothers, not just, heady, and bring it to the practical level, almost any brother is interested. They're like, hey, I like learning stuff.
And that inspires them to do more. And I'm not a proponent of saying your officers don't need to be proficient. I'm not talking about officers. I'm talking about our everyday Masons, the bees in the hive that are doing the work. We need to understand what that customer wants and needs. And you know what? It changes every 4 or 5 years as members come in and, no different than customers. If we want our business to survive, we have to constantly be polling our customers and not get so far off where we're Kmart and we're closed down the next day.
Yep. I mean, but
because we could quickly be Kmart.
Yeah, I think, a lot of brothers are having those thoughts about how do we stop becoming Kmart. And I think the thing is if we're in the business, if we compare masonry to a business, you go, what is our business? Our business is making masons, right? So there's a necessary element of education required to actually teach someone to become a mason, besides wear the apron, right? But even within that, there's those things that, we have been doing interviews, Matt and I, at various events and throughout the years, and the universal reason that people say is why they stay is almost always fellowship and camaraderie.
Right. Because that's when life happens, a parent dies, a family member dies, somebody gets divorced, somebody goes through a breakup. The esoteric work is not going to soothe your soul. It's the brothers. It's the camaraderie. And it is all important. But I think that we have to do a better job talking to our members. I just did an episode with a Mason out of Canada, and he said Masons want to be seen and acknowledged. None of that's hard, Hey, brother, I haven't seen you at a meeting in a while. What's going on? I miss you. Oh, well, it's not the same as it was 2 or 3 years ago. Great. Well, what are you missing? And it may be something so simple that, they used to have coffee for dinner, and the young kids don't drink coffee for dinner, but I'm older and I like to have that. I will bring you the cup of coffee myself, brother, if that's all it takes. But I think all of the little fixes are so minor, but we don't ask the question, right? It's no different than a relationship. These small things in our relationship, if we don't address them, they can fester into bigger things. And I think that we're just not communicating with our members enough.
Oh, I would agree. Those are all really good points. But Andrew, you kind of led us into something to get us out of the rabbit hole and back on track to our normal questions. Brian, what kept you, after you joined Freemasonry, what kept you around?
It's the camaraderie. Obviously that's the callback, right? So when I came out in 2015, I immediately went into Grand Lodge roles, got on the Grand Lodge line, district deputy got on the Grand Lodge line. When she was diagnosed with cancer, I remember getting a phone call, and anybody that knows me, I'm a hyper control freak. My environment's controlled all the time. I know who's around me, I could probably tell you if there's a right-hander or a left-hander around me. I'm very, very aware of my environment. Well, I lost total control when, your spouse is diagnosed with cancer. Of course, the first 2 phone calls I made were to brothers. They weren't to family. They weren't to friends. Right? They were to my brothers. And then the third phone call I get, because then that phone tree works. right, starts working. I got a call from a gentleman that's done a lot of these episodes with me. His name's Russ Brown. He's a past master. He was past master 10 years before I was, and he was a young master. He called and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" Of course, I couldn't talk. I was just a wreck. And he said, "I don't need you to say anything. I just want you to know my role is to be your spiritual guide through this." And I know where I was at in the car. I know what I was wearing. I hear his voice, and it actually gets me cracking a little bit, because in a time when you think that, your spouse of at the time 20 years is going to die, a brother was there to just clear the noise for me. And it really was a weight that was taken off. That I've never told the story, by the way. It was a weight that was taken off, and there was no doubt that he was there. There wasn't a doubt in my mind, like, "Oh yeah, well, that's nice to say." I was like, I'm back in the fight. It instantly put me back into the fight. So yeah. So for those who are wondering, my wife's alive. She's not dead.
I mean, excellent news. I was scared for a second.
Yeah, that's been 7 years ago.
I mean, it goes to show too that like the relationships you build and stuff like that can also teach you to be a better Mason. Like the affections that you build towards one another and the ability to go, not only is it just with your friends, you're a Mason. You're supposed to make the call. And it encourages you and inspires you to be like, you know what, my buddy's needs some help right now. I'm going to call him right now. And a lot of us, we fall into it. Everyone does, where they're like, "Oh, shucks. Well, I hope he figures it out," right? And a lot of people won't pick up the phone and make those type of phone calls. But there's something about this fraternity that I feel like really inspires people to rise to that and say, "Hey, that's my brother. He needs a friend right now. I'm going to call him immediately," and offer a hand.
Well, and the interesting things about this is we have chosen who our brothers are. If you really think about it, because we can choose to leave, right? And so we have chosen our brothers, and we have our friends will say stuff to us in order to save a relationship. They'll almost lie to us to save a relationship. A brother will not, and they should not, because we're brothers. You're not my friend. You're my brother. And I think that we mistake the two, and so we're not trying to save a friendship. We're trying to improve the brotherhood.
Well, and you'll find that, in your experience, some brothers are just friends and other brothers you meet are brothers.
Sure.
And, every brother gets like basically a quick friendship card, which is kind of a nice cheat code that they just get the friendship card pretty easily. But it takes, time and experience where then they're like, "No, that's my brother." The same guy that the first people you call when something happens, that's a brother.
Yep. Yeah, they get the day pass until they earn the membership for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, the interesting thing about brothers, and I'm pretty sure I've said this before, is you have to love them, but you don't have to like them.
I will tell you this. My wife and I, there's been times where, you're married. My wife would say, "I love you, but right now I don't like you very much and I need some distance." Yep. And you know what? But that's real talk. It's not it's real talk with family.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So what would you say, unintentionally, a lot of Matt and I's conversations over the years on our podcast have drawn around lodge culture. What is your lodge culture? How would you define your lodge? And if you don't know what your lodge's culture is, you better figure it out. Because if your lodge doesn't have a strong culture, then that's step one. How would you define your lodge's culture?
With the size, we have a lot of horsepower, so to speak. Our lodge culture that we hear from other people when they visit and then unfortunately demit from their lodges and come to our lodge is we are the most, at first they have this image of Pike being so big, and a lot of folks refer to us as the Grand Lodge of Pike because, we're just used to do it. We put more Grand Masters in. And so we used to be called Shirt and Pike because we were known as all the business guys. And it was just, so you have this air like, oh my gosh, what am I walking into with this place? But everybody says, when you go there, nobody gives a shit what you do. You are treated like you've been there forever. Everybody greets you. We have people that will be there to shake your hand and smile. No, even if somebody's too busy, somebody's on duty. And I think our culture is being very welcoming and nurturing. We did have the culture at one time of just producing the most crisp, powerful degree work in the state for sure because of our volume. And, I think when I was in the East, we were doing degree work 4 to 5 nights a week. when you do 80 degrees in a year, it's crazy. You get real good.
You gotta have like mini degree teams hidden within your lodge, like 3 sets of EA teams, 2 FCs.
Well, so in the 50s, the reason our lodge grew so large in the 50s, a Boeing brought in a new CEO to Wichita, and a bunch of layoffs happened. Well, the rumor was, because he was a very prominent Mason, that they laid off all non-Masons, which wasn't the case. Well, they knew that he affiliated with Albert Pike Lodge. For the next 2 years, they had degree work running, no exaggeration. We had dispensation 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. We raised over 2,500 people in 2 years.
What the heck?
Holy cow.
That primed the pump. So when you talk about, and there were degrees going on in different rooms, right? This room, there's a first going on and a sec, whatever and they're just, they were still learning, mouth to ear back then. I wasn't born in the 50s, so everyone says it was very proficient. The proficiency is as good as the master deems it is, right? But yeah, that's how our lodge grew so big so fast.
That is so crazy. I mean, there's some stories, Matt, from our lodge back, 30 years ago where they were running degrees with they had degree teams running degrees, but not 25 a day or whatever.
I can't imagine that. And here's my deal.
A lot of angry wives.
Well, there's that. But the other side of it is, you want to talk about getting... in my mind, I can't think that Masonic experience would be great because it's such a volume. How can you give that person the one-on-one attention, right? How can you mentor that person? I'm a quality over quantity. However, your quality will bring in your quantity, but the quantity pays the bill. So I'm not naive in that, right? But holy cow, I would think that folks got lost in the shuffle during that time period.
I would think so as well. I would agree. We should go back in our archives, Andrew, and look at some of the minute books from the 50s.
They had, so our understanding from our lodge, and ours is one of the biggest in the States and does not even compare to your lodge being 170 members. Back in the day, they would do have dedicated degree teams that would do it there and then go around the state and do degree work around the state too to help out. And our lodge still does very good degree work. But I mean, to your point, if you're doing that many degrees, the thing that people like to forget, and we have talked with people about, the challenges of doing days of light and stuff like that, is the Masonic journey doesn't end once you get your third degree. That's almost where it starts, where they start getting mentorship, getting integrated into lodge, learning about your lodge culture, learning about how lodges run, meeting all the brethren. The first step, I always say to a new MM or an entered apprentice or whoever, what's my first job? I'm try to meet as many of these brothers so that they know your name, you know his, and you know about each other, because that's when the fun starts, once you start knowing. But if you have, I guess, couple hundred coming in at once, I guess they might get to know each other, which is a cool experience to go in together like a class.
The battle buddies.
Yep, yeah. Battle buddies. But yeah, it'd be hard to integrate them into your lodge when you're taking such an influx so quickly.
I don't know how one would do it. I just don't know how one could do it effectively. You would have to set out your past masters, deploy your past masters, and say you each got 3.
Probably each got 10.
I can't imagine.
That would be wild.
It'd be a cool problem to have in 2026, though. I'm down for it.
I dream of seeing all my sidelines filled, so I'd be down to see that.
Sure, right?
Yeah. I will confer as many degrees as are needed over the course of a year. There is no limit.
Well, good for you, Matt. You might be conducting 2 in the next month. So
that's a good thing.
No, we got asked to help at the Day of Light and do the MM. So I'm trying to put together that cast. And then a lodge a little north of us reached out for help, and they need basically the entire cast, besides a handful of guys, maybe 4 of their officers. So, I just put the hat on to be master, and they're fill out 2 MMs in a month. And you're like, no, please.
Yeah. Our local Shrine Center has a degree team, and they help some of the so in Wichita, even though our lodge is as large as it is, we have 9 other lodges in our MSA. So there's a lot going on.
I had a pretty cool experience, 3 months ago now? 3 months ago, where they were a lodge out towards Madison needed help, and they wanted to do 4 Master Mason degrees in one day. So I conferred 4 of them in a row. So now if somebody asks me to do one, I'm like, and chip shot.
Really, right?
Hi, listeners. I'm Brother Samuel.
I'm Brother Gabriel.
And I'm Brother Ryan. And we're the hosts from the Third Degree Masonic Podcast. We hope you're enjoying Time for Fellowship as much as we are. If you're looking for further knowledge on Masonic topics, then check us out on the same platforms as Time for Fellowship. And remember, craftsmen,
Keep your working tools in order.
And always be on the level.
now let's get back to Time for Fellowship.
I know. I got to get my ritual book cracked pretty quick here.
Yes, you do, because I won't do them for you all year.
I know. I always tell you, like last year when you helped me in it's like in the first month, you got to like month and a half, you got to give me a break. And then after that, I'm going to get it down. But it's hard because you're also trying to do all the administrative stuff and set up stuff. And you're like, crack your book. And you're like, oh my God. You're like, hold on.
Yeah. It's an interesting balance, but really, most of your work is done as you're working toward the East, and you have your good officers in place. You're the spokesperson. Let them get it done for you.
Well, and the key is like, so in our lodge, we make our junior warden confer the EAs, the senior warden do the fellow crafts, and the master does the MMs. So
cool.
you kind of baby step up. So ideally, if you did it the way you're supposed to, when you get to the MM, it's not your first time ever conferring something. You're like, okay, I've done it's kind of like when you're learning your obligation or something. It builds on itself, and it kind of works its way up.
Yeah.
But it is a new one, and I haven't cracked my book in a while because we did so many degrees over the last 2 years that I didn't have to crack it that often. I was like, I already got this shoved in my brain, but now it's moving on to a big part. So,
well, once you put your hat on as master for your first meeting, you know it all, but you are instantly going to feel dumb, and you'll forget it. And you know what? Get that first one out of the way. It's like you buy the new car, go ahead and just door ding it, just get it out of the way, control your own destiny.
Just throw my gavel at a past master immediately, set the tone.
Just get it out of the way.
The hat scrambles the brain.
It does.
You'll think you're like, I got this, and
you're wondering if it has a heater inside because it's so hot all of a sudden. Yeah, mine in fact is back there.
I see it.
That I wore when I was in the East.
Yeah,
Nice.
I've only worn the top hat that I got one time for installation, so I'm ready to dust it back off and feel the sweaty felt back on my head once more.
Well, let's shift gears here for a minute and let's talk podcasting. So,
Okay.
Brian, obviously you have the old-fashioned Masonic podcast, which, by the way, I'm a big fan of old-fashioned
Appreciate that, guys.
Yep, and there'll be a
cocktails.
link in the show notes.
Fan of the show. Whiskey old-fashioned sour is my preference, which is kind of a no-go in Wisconsin because we're brandy old-fashioned sweet up here.
I'm a brandy old-fashioned press guy, sir.
Ooh,
I'm a Presbyterian.
All right.
Well, I'm not, but I like
Yeah.
my cocktails like that.
So obviously the name caught me at some point, but your content is excellent, actually. But what's the origin story? What made you decide to get into it?
That's very simple. So I think after I came out of the East, I was tasked with doing some promotions for our lodge. It's like, all right. So I grabbed my phone and I did a thing called the Pike Profile. And our lodge is so large that there are so many people that don't know each other. And then we have huge business leaders and guys that they're like, I didn't know they were part of our lodge. So in our library at our lodge, I would bring members in and do a 1-minute Pike Profile. What's your name? What do you do? Da, 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 da. And I called it the Pike Profile and gave it to someone. They ran it on our Facebook page. It was, we're just doing it just to kind of let other members know. It took off. It was like a thing. People were thirsty for it. It was new at the time. You're talking now 10 years ago. And it's like, oh, all right. And then started interviewing a couple of people, taking it to a 5-minute. My friend Russ and I thought of the podcast, and I called him and said, hey, I want to try this thing. I want to do a podcast, interview 2 or 3 guys. Would you be interested? He's like, what are you getting me into? I said, you don't have to do it forever because I know that's not your thing, but just let's get it primed. So our first 3 episodes And looking back there, oh my God, they're awful. The camera's on our face. We were probably 6 scotches in because we had done a scotch tasting before. We looked like we have high blood pressure. They were terrible. The sound was trash. We're reading notes. It was just awful. But it started to segue. The name, by the way, this is also the first time I've ever said this on a podcast. So, old-fashioned Masonic podcast. Well, we like an old-fashioned. Now, folks will say, well, old-fashioned is spelled wrong on your podcast. We said, listen, we're a little funny. So we didn't tell people for a while what we were doing. They're just blasting us because, you guys don't know how to spell. You don't use spell check. So old-fashioned is spelled old-fashioned with ED, Masonic podcast. Well, of men in our 50s, we try to eliminate any ED in our life. So that's the inside joke of why there's no ED on old-fashioned. So you heard it here first. This is the exclusive. I've never even said it on our podcast.
But if you have too many old-fashions, you might get ED.
Well, that cuts both ways, my friend. So we started the podcast and found a rhythm, and then we started getting emails. We should talk to this person. You should talk to this person. And, like what you guys get, right? Or, this person's interesting, and can somebody give me the hookup there, right? And so then it grows to me. I was talking to Matt before the show, so we're going to let everyone in. I don't do any social media posts. I don't post anything on. I obviously have a social media page because you have to have it, but I don't post. I don't monitor. I don't look at any comments. So all the people that talk trash, I don't see the comments. Anything that's, when we get death threats or anything that's crazy that comes through, they'll literally print them out in paper. And I have piles of paper here that I can look through and just kind of be up to speed. My dopamine hit is not the views. It's not the likes. It's not that. The dopamine hit for me is talking to brothers. That's the dopamine hit. So everyone's like, because people that know me, I don't keep an app on my phone. That's just not me. Listen, I'm not tech challenged. I can assure you, I can write some code. I can cause some problems, but that's just not the dopamine hit. But it became, because I don't have a hobby. I don't golf. I don't fly. I don't do anything like that. And then it became a little obsessive, and it just.
So when you started it, obviously, for those of our listeners that may not have listened to your I can't talk now. Your show before, apparently, wow, Andrew, just cut like all of this.
I'm not going to cut it.
Suddenly struggling.
I'm not going to cut it. You're going to have to. Everyone's listening.
All over it.
I'm going to start all over. For our listeners who haven't listened to your show before, you have run a wide array of topics. You've had some more sensational stuff on there, some more breaking news type of stuff. Was that originally part of the vision for the podcast when you started it, or was it going to be more simple, talking to brothers, and then these opportunities to have these other conversations came about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been on a lot of podcasts. I've never been asked that. So the real reason for the podcast was to be an extension of what we did at Pike. I wanted the world to see the face of Masonry, that it's not just what you think it is. It's not a bunch of old, rich white guys, or what a lot of people think Masonry was and still at sometimes is. So I wanted to be able to tell stories and say, we've got guys that are in construction, they're in business, we have attorneys, we have doctors, we have firemen, we have all of this. And then my personality started to seep through. Our Grandmaster recently did a speech and had mentioned me and said, I appreciate Brian's lack of tolerance for bullshit. And that goes, and he said it in a sincere way, meaning this: the brand of Masonry, and there's times I know I go too hard. I could certainly subdue a much more than I do, but the brand of Masonry, we're not perfect. We're not perfect as men, and we're not perfect as a fraternity. We're constantly chipping away, to make that smooth ashlar. But when stuff goes on that's so absurd that folks might think that we, the collective Masonry, believe in that. For example, there was an issue that happened, and I'm not going to name the state. Anybody that's followed, they know. There was an issue that happened in a state where we had a recognized brother called, emailed, called again, was going to go visit the lodge. He gets out. not even Prince Hall, which not that it should have mattered anyway in that recognized state, gets out of his car, walks up, the secretary and master run out, they stop him at the door and say, you can't come in. He says, oh, no, I'm not Prince Hall. I'm AFNAM. Oh, by the way, he's a tall, good-looking, black Marine in a state in the South. And they said, no, it's not a Prince Hall thing. Our lodge is not integrated, quote.
Oof.
And then he sent a letter to the Grand Lodge. The Grand Lodge sent a letter back, which we covered on the podcast. It was the coldest letter I've ever read in my life. And that, if that would have happened in our state, I would have brought the same smoke. That is not a reflection of Masonry to me. And anybody can deny anybody in their lodge for whatever reason. That's fine. It should never be because of race, ever. And that I had a major issue with that, so much that that state called our Grand Master, and I can tell you our Grand Master quickly said, you guys might want to take care of your own house first. And it's a really interesting thing. So it kind of dovetailed into that. And I can tell you we probably get 20 sensational stories a week, no exaggeration. We don't touch all of them because it's just, it could get really messy, but stuff where another southern state that's being sued by Grand Lodge officers is suing their Grand Lodge. That's crazy. But it needs to be talked about because there's a lot of money involved in that we've not disclosed, and we keep packets on this. We just have to me, this is my stance, not the stance of your podcast. To me, silence is compliance. And if we know stuff in Masonry is going on that is so absurd, and we don't say, whoa, whether it's in your lodge, in your Grand Lodge, or in Masonry as a whole, I think that that's a problem. And that's where kind of the sensational stuff came. You know, the clandestine's a whole nother thing, but that's where kind of the sensational came, because if we're not going to fight for our brothers, who's going to fight for them? And we just had this long conversation about friends and brothers. I would expect my brother, blood or not, they better be flying to my relief, and we're going to get down together.
And it's interesting, and I've listened to a handful, probably a dozen, of some of those stories that you've reported on bringing in guys from those jurisdictions or those areas where there's been some sort of weird, usually overreach or something strange going on. And it's always an interesting thing in Masonry because, like, there is this element of keep it in house, like, and kind of like don't air your dirty laundry, just keep it in house. But the problem is in, you know, obviously, once again, my opinion, not anyone else's, that when you do that, it's kind of what allows that behavior to happen unchecked, because they just go, hey, no one's allowed to talk about it. We just did something. And you're like, oh, someone has to talk about it, or it's easy just to allow it then to continue. And especially when it's something as egregious as denying a brother based on the color of his skin, you're like, that is running completely to the tenets and the meaning and the philosophy of the Masonic fraternity. So if you allow that with no sort of ramifications, then you go, okay, who is actually debasing the reputation of the fraternity more? The person who's saying this is unacceptable, or the person who is doing it? And you're like, and I think we know which one that is, right? And it's important. We need to hold each other accountable.
Exactly. Well, what's interesting about these stories, especially the ones in the South, unbelievable amount of their members, and it could happen in our states too, they had no idea what was going on. You know, a lot of the times, if you're not an officer and going to Grand Lodge, you might be out of the loop on normal stuff, which is kind of strange. With modern technology, there's a Grand Master out of Indiana. He's awesome. He does something on Sunday, and he gives a recap. I love that. We have platforms, Grand Masters. It doesn't have to be formal. Get your rear end in front of a camera and a microphone and control your own narrative.
Yeah, and be transparent.
And we're thirsty for that as humans. And it doesn't have to be the answer we want. It just has to be transparent. Hey, I'm probably going to do a bylaw proposal to raise our per capita because we're going to be in the red here real fast. Don't spring it on me at the meeting. Let's talk about it through the year so I can get mentally prepared. It's no different than a board meeting, you know, and I think that we have to treat our members like the board. if you say, hey, this is the books, it shouldn't be, well, I had no idea. Well, Brian, you've been in lodge every month this year. We've talked about it every month. What is going on? But we still have grand lodges or shrine centers especially that will joke and say, treasurer's report, we've had some, we've spent some, we've got some left over. That's not cute anymore.
No.
Because, our lodge has a nice big, we have a good fund, but we still have it professionally audited every year. And that audit report is presented by the auditors to our lodge.
Yeah, the bigger the fund, the more you need an audit.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because, all of a sudden, 10,000 here, you wouldn't miss it in our fund. And that's terrifying to me. So, but the long, short story.
No, that's awesome. It's one of those, the more light you shine in the corners, the less stuff can hide in the shadows type of deal, right? And I think it is good that we get to hear about some of these distasteful stories out of Freemasonry so that we can understand better what the perception of the fraternity is at large in certain areas. And obviously what happens in another state, if word about it gets around, it's going to reflect on Freemasonry in your own state. So this is good stuff for us to know as a whole, as a fraternity.
And it teaches you to guard against it too. If it happened there, it can happen here. You know what I mean? Like just one bad character can do the exact same thing.
Yeah. If you don't think that at the Conference of Grand Masters that you guys are coming up, that they talk about things, and if something works, good, bad, or indifferent, the conversations move throughout the conference.
Yeah, the Grandmasters are keeping tabs on one another for sure. I've learned that through the years, is that jurisdictions look at their neighbors and go, what's going on here? What's going good? Like, what can we learn from each other? But also, I think any good leader does that. What are concerns, right? And, balancing those two, I think. Obviously, right. That's where it's going to happen. They're going to be like, what's been happening here? Oh, it's a great charity program. Sick. Oh, that happened? Oh, no. And you have to kind of sort through it all.
And I'm certainly not naive to think our podcast is certainly an acquired taste, because there's a group that doesn't really like some of the approaches, and which is fine. I can respect that. There are a lot of great Masonic podcasts out there like this, right? And we have options. That's the beautiful thing about it. And we all really run different lanes. I don't think there's any podcast that I can say, well, this one's pretty much like this one, right? We've all kind of carved out a niche. We're not trying to jump in anybody's lane. There's the super esoteric and the history, and they're beautiful. And then, there's the TMZ version, which is probably old fashioned. That's just the reality. I'm not naive to think that, but we'd prefer not to talk about any of the TMZ type stuff. We have so much great content. We unfortunately that comes away, and we're just not going to be silent.
Yeah, and that's what's cool too, especially in the Matt and I have talked many times about how the Masonic podcaster community has become like a appended body that podcasters are a part of, right?
So true.
And everyone's doing, like, your passion, what got you into it, is the same passion that Matt and I had. We want to share Wisconsin voices and Wisconsin Masonry as a lived experience with the state and with the world at large. If you talk to the Third Degree podcast, very similar story. They want to tell stories and they want to show off all these great people. And, 365 or 357, I should say. God, that should be easy to remember.
On the level.
Yep, on the level. Traveling Man. It's a lot of people, just like kind of what we've been talking about, that they're like, there's a lot of cool people and I want to share them and talk to them. And I can have an excuse to drag them in a room for an hour and force them to talk to me direct. And you're like, yep.
Well, and I learned something on every episode, either about humans or just like, what, I could maybe do something different. Again, that's the dopamine hit for me. It really is so simple. And that's like the vibe. I'll come out of a podcast. My wife's like, I don't know what you're doing down there, but I like it.
You're like, I'm high.
I'm
high on adrenaline.
Yeah.
Right.
One other question I always like to ask, how do you think, you said, how long have you been a Mason? Like 20, you said?
Pushing 20 years.
Yep, 20 years. How has Masonry affected you personally? Have you seen yourself change since you became a Mason?
Yeah, in fact, my wife has as well. So the thing that resonates the most is built a lot of businesses. I haven't had a W-2 since 1995, right? So I've been just doing my own thing for that time. And so when you're kind of doing your own thing and you don't have guardrails, you get a little edge, and you have employees, and it's like, oh, if you don't like it, you can go. I would never do that. I was a good employer, but it's like, we can let you go. And I couldn't have that approach in Masonry with volunteers. So what Masonry taught me, I became a much better leader, obviously in the lodge, but afterwards with my businesses, because no longer was I leading by, well, you're going to do it or we're going to do something different. It forced me to use my personality to influence and empower more. And when I came out of the East, not only did my employees notice it, but my wife noticed it with my patience level. I'm used to, let's go, let's get something, let's get it popping. What are we waiting on, right? Let's go. And I still have that energy, but it's just like, all right, what do we need to do to get this moving? Right? It's more of a help me understand how we can get here. We missed the expectation here. What do we need to do different? And so it really forced me. It made me less of a bully. I mean, it really did.
You learn how to get buy-in, right? Instead of people doing it because you told them to do it, you get them to come along with you for the ride. They're personally invested in it. They also want to be there, and they feel responsible for it, and they want to be part of something bigger, and that's getting buy-in, and that's far better method of leadership than going, you need to do this because I told you to.
I control your paycheck. I control your paycheck, so you better listen. Yeah, the servant leadership style is definitely like a trend that, like, there's some masters that'll come in and don't think they need to do servant leadership, and they end up losing control and they lose their buy-in. It's like it is like truly a democratically elected person that volunteers, and they just go, hey, if the volunteers just don't show up, what do you do then? And you're like, the lodge doesn't exist. And you're like, yep, the lodge is a group of people. And so you got to figure out how to shape them and help them around their ashlers too. And it's crazy because it is I'd say a painstaking journey, because you have to like really work with people. But at the end of it, one of the most rewarding things is when you see a guy who might have been struggling succeed and exceed, and you go, wow, like I showed him that he could do something great and something amazing, and nothing feels better than that.
Right, and watching your line officers develop and grow into masters, and then district deputies and Grand Lodge officers later, it really is like watching your children grow because they were inspired for some reason, and there's like, okay, he wasn't just a total tyrant. But yeah, that's the gift Masonry gave me, which wasn't what I was thinking I would ever need from Masonry. It's like, what do you mean? I lead. This is what I do. I was a terrible leader until I started working my way through the chairs.
You thought you were going to be wearing a little red fez, and then look at what happened.
I did. And, everything happens like it's supposed to, right? It's so cliche. I joined at the right time. If I would have joined in my 20s or even earlier 30s, I would have been terrible, right? Masonry presented itself at the right time, and thank goodness I was listening.
I always like to say that Freemasonry finds you when you're ready for it.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
It does always feel that way. Like you'll find people who are like, oh, I've been thinking about Masonry for all this time and all these things. And like when I joined, it was right. I thought I wanted to join in college, but I couldn't pay dues. I was like, nope, too expensive. Not going to do it. And then, when I'm in my late 20s, like 28, being like, oh, I'm settled down now more. I have a career. Now maybe I'll check it out. And it finds you like right at the perfect time when you're ready. And if it doesn't, what you'll find is people might join and go, time's not right. And then they disappear for 10 years. And suddenly 10 years later, something calls them back. They walk back in the door and suddenly, boom, it clicks. And then away they go. And so it finds its winding road and its winding stairs in its unique ways.
Yeah, selfishly, I wish I would have joined earlier to start my clock, because I'll never get a 50-year pin. Just the math's just not going to work for me. But it presented itself when it was supposed to, as Matt said.
Hang it with all your other mountain of pins, probably. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, the amount of, that's one thing I don't are the damn lapel pins. I've probably given so many away, but there's probably more other nonsense in here than any one human needs.
I have a absurd collection of lapel pins. So privilege of going to the Conference of Grandmasters when they were in Milwaukee. We were running a merch booth to help out, and I made it my goal and mission to get as many pins as possible. And so I found the Grandmaster, and I was like, I need some pins because I found out the game. You have to offer a pin, and then they give you one of their pins. I was like, I need some pins. And so Grandmaster gives me a handful of pins. I'm like, all right, I'm golden. I'm out in the smoker's deck, having a cigarette. Hey, talk for a little bit. Hey, can I give you my Grandmaster's pin? Oh, here's a pin. I had my whole lanyard up top to bottom, and so now I'm
and it's 800
inundated.
pounds.
Yeah, it was starting to hurt my neck, but it's so funny because our director, who is the one who is kind of directing the whole event, comes up and he's like, I didn't get a single pin. How do you have all these pins? I'm like, you got to play the game, man. There's a game within the game here. It's pin based.
All of a sudden, you're the Jedi master of it. You just figured it out.
Yep, there's a game within a game. How many pins can you leave with? I'm gonna play that game again.
I'm gonna buy you one of those lapel extenders for your suit because I want to see you try to put them all on for one of your last meetings as worshipful.
Suspenders.
I could look so fly. I have suspenders.
See, I'm here for you.
You have some pieces of flair. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that in a couple of weeks, Matt. I'm gonna have to go find the Grandmaster and get a pin supply going, so I can trade them out.
Oh, I'm sure we'll be able to get a pin supply. That won't be a problem.
You'll be fine.
Got to get the pin currency.
Right, the good old pin currency. That's anywhere you travel in masonry, though. That's if you go to the cave degree in Tennessee. That's if you go to any of that stuff. You always take a bunch of pins with you.
I'll trip you out about Texas. They do pins, but nothing like all the masters challenge coins.
Ooh.
And so when I was down last year doing a special project for the Grand Lodge of Texas, I have more challenge coins from that state than any one human should ever have. And these coins are legit. I mean, there's some thought into them. It's like, wow, these are the coolest things ever.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
so
that's the next upgrade.
Expensive.
The harder game within the
so
game.
expensive.
The coin game.
The harder game within the game, yeah. The more expensive game within the game.
For sure.
I'll trade you 3 lapel pins for 1 challenge coin.
Yeah, what's the currency exchange? What's the pin to coin exchange?
Oh yeah, you know there's some sort of conversion. It's an 11-1. It's 11-1, Andrew.
Yeah, I'll give you a glass of scotch for.
Depending on the scotch, that could get real interesting.
Cool.
Well, Andrew, do you want to ask the question?
The question. All right, Brian, this is the ceremonial question. We ask it to every guest who's ever been a master in the East. What advice would you give to a incoming master ascending the Oriental chair, such as myself, about preparing or how to handle their year in the East? What advice you got?
Well, preparing, I would tell somebody as junior warden, they should know what their calendar is already when they're a master, at least a pretty good working draft. You should also, starting your junior warden year, you should be identifying folks that should be on your officer line. You should also be identifying committee heads. You should also be identifying ways to use your past masters, and as we mentioned earlier, to weaponize them. And my advice to everybody that I've given, once you're in the East, what we call the soft chairs, the master, the senior and junior wardens, you need to have your own text thread with just them, where you have communications leading up, because your wardens should never allow a master to be caught off guard in a meeting. If something's coming up, somebody needs to be prepared to gavel it down. There should be no surprises. But the biggest thing after all of that noise is have fun, respect the landmarks and the customs and courtesies of your lodge, but do something different. I did themed, every meeting was a themed meeting, whether it was historical, ugly sweater, spring break theme. And themes started because you want to give somebody a reason to come to lodge and wonder what's happening next, or I'm making this up. It's a Star Wars theme. All right, what's he gonna try to pull off here? I'm gonna get there for this. It's an XYZ themed, but when you're a master, as long as you're respecting the landmarks and the history of your lodge, it's your time to make the lodge be the best it can be that year. It's not your year, right? It's the lodge's year, but you're driving the ship. And legacy, when people look back and say, Andrew was master in 2026, he did a great job because of X. Whatever you want them to say, you need to figure out how to prioritize that. You know, he was great about bringing energy. He was great with Masonic education. He was great with whatever you want that to be. You have to somehow emulate that and make sure that all of your line officers know that I want this year to be known as this, and they need to really be walking the walk. So find out what your plan is, but make sure the entire team knows what the plan is, and then eventually your entire lodge will know what the message is. And it's not complicated. It really isn't complicated if you communicate, but it starts the preparation with knowing what you think that vision is, and then make sure you communicate the vision.
Awesome. I had to take like 3 notes, 3 or 4 notes here. We've got to start a text thread in like 10 minutes here.
We should probably go back to every single episode we've had a past master on and like start doing a collection of all the advice that's been given. I wish I would have. So this, Brian, was born out of towards the end of my senior warden year. I started asking all the past masters of our own lodge what their one piece of advice for me going into the East was, and then we decided to bring it to the show because it was
great question,
a valuable question.
So one thing we ask on our show of past masters is, you had a whole agenda of things you wanted to get done, but what was the one thing that you wish you would have accomplished that couldn't quite get accomplished that year? And we ask that of masters and past grandmasters and past potentates, because there's always something like, oh, I really wanted to do insert this, but I couldn't do it because of this, or it fell off track because of this. But man, if I was master again, I would really push for this. I love the question. I love to hear what people say, because you can hear how painful it is sometimes. Or like, I wish I would have had us out in the community much more, but I wanted it to be about energy, changing the face, and bringing the excitement back to Pike, because we got a little stuffy. But the great thing about it, when I came out, Mike, who was right behind me, he brought us in the community, and holy hell, what he did with the energy that was built, it has set our lodge up still to this day with the energy. It became infectious, and he knew that was like on our agenda, but it just didn't happen. And that was on his agenda anyway. And it was like such a it was so seamless because we had communicated so much. And Mike was just an unbelievable leader. We came through Blue Lodge, Scottish Rite Shrine together, and we'd never knew each other. And I don't know that I could love a human any more than that guy that I've only known about 20 years, but he is so thoughtful, and he just really has made me a better Mason and a man. Just a great dude.
Well, it's an amazing example, and also a proof of concept of like kind of what you were talking about with get your ideas out there so your team gets it. Because like one thing at our lodge, we always go to the pub after our meeting. And that's where the actual business happens. We're sitting down with the officers being like, we got to think about this. Have we ever had this idea? What about this? And you'll see all these ideas cross-pollinate, and sometimes the sitting master will be like, oh, you want to do that in your year? Well, I'm going to steal that. And you're like, please do. We just need to do it sometime. Start it here. And then there'll be stuff that someone wasn't able to quite get done, but we knew it was an idea floating around that the officers were interested in. The next master goes, you know what? I'm going to pick that and run with that because based on, what's going on, the culture, the context, maybe it was a better time at that time to hit the ground running on something that was important, And you'll see that happening all the time, because when your officers share a vision, there's not as much chaos between master to master. It's more like,
absolutely,
yep, we're going to be doing a lot of the same stuff that's working, and we're going to continue to try to improve on this area now, and this, and build, and build, and build. Because if you don't share your vision in that stuff, then the next guy comes in, and who knows, you might be doing a completely different thing, and the lodge shifts in a really hard direction, and then the boat just starts going all over instead of facing, the North Star.
Yeah, the whiplash effect is a real thing, and we've seen it in lodges. We see it a lot in shrine centers. It's really unfortunate, but it goes back to our conversation about the board meeting style. Put your vision up, and your first meeting, I'd say, guys, here are the goals we have, and I'd like to figure out how to do this together. And just really bring everyone in. There were times where when we had a serious conversation, I'd put us at ease. Everyone drag your chairs to the center of the lodge. We're going to sit in a little circle here. We're just going to talk it out. And that way we're just talking. You can do whatever you want. You put it at ease. You don't have to put it at ease. You can say, you know what, freedom of the lodge, grab your chairs out, but put it at ease and let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
We don't have real talk conversations enough. And in lodge, that's the realest place you should be. The realest place you should be. No feelings. Feelings are outside with the Tyler.
You're all on the level. Heck yeah. Well, Brian, thank you for the great advice and the wonderful conversation. It was a pleasure having you on. To our listeners, the old-fashioned, no ED, because you don't want to, you don't want to have that happen to you. And old-fashioned Masonic podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. I oftentimes watch it on YouTube because he does the video and everything, unlike us who just stare at each other on screens and give you the audio. So it's a great thing to listen to. Please check it out. Give him some support. There'll be a link in the show notes to find Brian's great content. Matt, anything you want to add before we go off there?
Thank you again for coming on. Very much, Brian. Appreciate it. And to all of our listeners, make sure you're following us on all of our socials. And if you need to get a hold of us, timeforfellowship@gmail.com.
Timeforfellowship@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you guys all have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone.